Hello, and welcome to Decarbonize, the clean energy podcast from Fresh Energy. Fresh Energy is a Minnesota nonprofit working to speed Minnesota's transition to a clean energy economy. My name is Jo Olson. I do communications here at Fresh Energy, and I'm here today with Michael Noble, our Executive Director, and Justin Fay, our Government Affairs Director, and we're going to talk about Fresh Energy's legislative and policy goals for the year. Welcome to you both. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, we've got a lot to cover, and if you both are ready, I think we should dive right in. Okay? All right,
Let's do
great.
it.
Let's go. Well, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by asking about the recent DFL leadership change. Susan Kent from Woodbury was elected Senate DFL Minority Leader, replacing Tom Bach of Virginia, and he had that leadership position since 2011. So what does the new Senate DFL leadership mean for clean energy in Minnesota and for our work here at Fresh Energy?
Well, it's a great question, and I know something that's been in the news that people have questions about. The bottom line to keep in mind is that the composition of the Senate hasn't changed, and for groups like Fresh Energy, we're committed to working with the folks who are in charge when they're in charge. We're fortunate to have had a good working relationship with both Senator Bach and Senator Kent. We're looking forward to working with Senator Kent in her new role. I know from direct experience that she cares a lot about the climate and clean energy, and looking forward to working with senators from both parties this session.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And now that we've got that covered, is there anything else that we should say about the 2019 legislative session to set the stage for our conversation today?
Well, I think this one interesting thing is out of 50 states in the United States of America, Minnesota is the only legislature where the Senate and the House are controlled by two different political parties. So I think we have a special burden and a special opportunity to show that we can make bipartisan policy progress on energy. Fresh Energy did a great job last year of getting all of our bills, maybe not every single one, but almost all of our bills authored by Democrats in the House and Republicans in the Senate. And that'll be our goal again this year, is to find meaningful, real, concrete policy progress that can be supported by both political parties and signed into law by Governor Walz.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there anything that you think that we're going to be needing to play defense on this year?
Well, that's the thing is there's always, 4,000, 5,000 bills get introduced in a typical legislative session. Usually only a couple hundred at most become law. And we're going to be very vigilant, making sure that we don't go backwards in anything, that every single thing that becomes law is meaningful progress on energy efficiency and renewable energy and affordable housing and bicycling and transportation and running our economy with prosperity and equality and equity without dependence on fossil fuels is kind of the heart and soul of what we're trying to do up there. So if it's not progress, we don't want it to become law. So we'll be playing defense on any bad bills that get introduced.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, is there anything that we should know about what's happening at the federal level before we start talking about here and now in Minnesota?
Well, the federal government, the United States Congress, is really at a stalemate. Hundreds of bills have been passed through the House of Representatives, and none of them are getting a hearing in Mitch McConnell's Senate. I think people know that the president is not an ally on climate change or clean energy or energy innovation or weaning ourselves from fossil fuels. So, that's why in the 1800s, de Tocqueville said that the states were the laboratories of democracy, and we have to show that we can make progress at the states and have innovation percolate up. So that's what we'll be focused on this year, is the state.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, now kind of focusing closer to home, Governor Walz and his administration have shown a really strong commitment to elevating climate, and new clean energy leaders in the legislature have also been building momentum for change. We've got a lot of work ahead this session, and let's start off with Clean Cars Minnesota. This year, the MPCA is slated to complete the rulemaking process to adopt how folks can use their electric vehicles, what electric vehicles they have access to. How can people become a part of this process and engage in the rulemaking journey?
Well, it's a great question, and Governor Walz has shown, and the Pollution Control Agency have shown real leadership in advancing Clean Cars Minnesota. It's a nationally significant initiative, and Fresh Energy is very, very excited that it's happening here in Minnesota and to be part of it. Moving forward, the timeline and the rulemaking process is pretty distinct from the legislative session and other things that happen in government. It's I think it's important for folks to understand it's really sort of on its own timeline, and it's a very kind of specific process that exists kind of for itself. What we think is likely to happen is the next phase will be another public comment period in response to a draft rule that the Pollution Control Agency will publish. We expect that sometime this spring. We don't know exactly when, but probably concurrently with the legislative session still happening. And when that happens, there'll be both a public comment period where folks will be able to make comments directly to the agency online or in writing. And there'll also likely be a series of public meetings. It's very similar to the process that folks may have seen in the fall when the Clean Cars Minnesota proposal was first announced. There'll be another round of public comment and public meetings that look a lot like that. So 5 or 6 meetings probably spread around the state was what happened last time. I'd expect something similar to happen this spring. So that'll be the next phase. And this is all towards an end goal of having that the Pollution Control Agency and governor have sort of publicly named, which is to have the rule final by the end of the 2020 calendar year.
Okay, great. And I think everyone listening can expect to see dates, times, locations for those meetings on the Fresh Energy website, as well as a lot of other places too.
Absolutely.
All right, well, moving on to the governor's One Minnesota Path to Clean Energy. The governor's package includes 3 components: 100% by 2050 carbon-free electricity standard, a suite of urgently needed updates to Minnesota's flagship energy conservation program, and a modernized regulatory framework known as Clean Energy First. All right, so first off, Michael, let's talk about 100% carbon-free by 2050.
Well, we were very excited in the spring of 2019 to be on the podium when the governor rolled out his vision for electricity supply that has no carbon pollution over the next 3 decades. Obviously, we have to jumpstart these reductions in carbon-based electricity even faster than that, and we remain committed to working with the executives of the key utilities to find a pathway to get that passed into law. But we're also an important partner and ally with the 100% campaign that's bringing along labor unions and racial justice organizations and equity and community organizations, along with traditional environmentalists who support the vision of an electric supply without carbon pollution. So, conventional wisdom is that's a big lift for 2020, but your trusty allies at Fresh Energy are not going to stop pushing on that until the gavel comes down at the end of the session. So I'm getting a big smile from Justin. But, I'm just being candid that last year the whole package was tied together, the 100% clean energy and the 2 other provisions, and the governor tried to pass it all as one package, and maybe this year it'll be thought of in its component parts, and there'll be some work on each of them separately.
Great, thank you, Michael. Justin, do you want to take on Minnesota's Energy Conservation Program component?
Sure. So this is a proposal that the administration calls the Energy Optimization Act. It's a really important part of the overall puzzle. I think folks listening at home probably already understand that the cheapest and most cost-effective energy in the world is the energy that we never use. And Minnesota is very fortunate to have a long-standing energy efficiency policy program called the Conservation Improvement Program. And every, maybe once a decade or so, it's important for policymakers and stakeholders to take a look at that, think about how that program is working, how is energy efficiency being treated and advanced based on the current needs of our energy system. And that's really all that this proposal is about, is looking at What does it mean to be energy efficient and to drive energy efficiency in an age when we're increasingly talking about things like electrification and a grid and a system that's powered by clean energy rather than fossil fuels and large power plants. And those require some different technical answers to how you run energy efficiency programs. And so this is sort of, in a lot of ways, really the workhorse of the whole package. It's not flashy. It doesn't, it's not going to be on bumper stickers. It's not going to be something that legislators are likely running on. But it's a really, really important policy framework and building on decades of success that we've had at Fresh Energy and more broadly as a state in making our system as efficient as possible.
Great. Thank you. Anything you want to add about Clean Energy First?
Well, Clean Energy First is really a new framework for thinking about the exact opposite part of this equation, which is energy. Energy efficiency is how do we use less energy? How do we sort of deploy energy once it's been generated? And Clean Energy First is really about how do we think about a regulatory framework for Minnesota utilities and other stakeholders to operate in a new environment where it's assumed that clean energy is the cheapest, most readily available generation to build. Minnesota has a law on the books. It's been there for 25 years, since the early 1990s, that says we have a preference for renewable energy. But the interesting thing about that is it was written at a time when we basically had no renewable energy built in the state. It was an aspirational provision, and that law hasn't been meaningfully updated in 25 years. And so now in 2020, clean energy isn't aspirational. It's actually the norm. And so the way that the Public Utilities Commission and state policy treats decisions about how we make generation, how we decide what generation sources to use, needs to account for that. And so that's really what that's about, is the framework on which we're going to continue to sort of drive home clean energy as the first choice among all options for future electricity generation.
Got it. Thank you. Now, if you're both ready, I think we could move on to advanced building performance standards. So ultimately, across our state, cities are taking the lead on combating climate change through really ambitious local commitments. And a rapidly emerging area of focus for them is the building sector. So ultimately, they want to ensure that new construction is built to energy performance standards that meet the needs of our climate, not just the bare minimum. So what should we know about advanced building performance standards this year?
So this is a very important area of Fresh Energy's passion and expertise and influence to try to get new buildings built smarter, better, more efficiently, and less dependent on fossil fuels. We actually have the engineering and the economics to confidently say that we can build a new commercial building that does not have a carbon footprint at all. And we can build that economically, affordably, reliably, with health and safety. But our building codes aren't getting us there. Building codes, we joke, is the lowest quality building you can legally build is the one that meets the minimum code. And what we want to do is we want to help jumpstart advanced buildings as the norm, not as the oddball thing that somebody dreams of and pulls off once in a blue moon, but that routinely people are building advanced buildings. So we've been working with the Walz Department of Commerce and the Walz Department of Labor and Industry and the executive and the board at the Building Trades Association, the labor unions that build commercial buildings in metropolitan Minnesota. And we want to find a partnership that allows better buildings, high efficiency buildings, zero carbon or low carbon buildings to become the norm in Minnesota and not the outlier. That's our policy goal, and we're working with all the stakeholders to see if we can pull that off. In the Senate, Senator Dave Senjum of Rochester is the lead author, and this provision is very important in Rochester, where they're building hundreds of millions of dollars of new commercial building as part of Destination Medical Center. And in the House of Representatives, our chief author, help me, Justin, our chief author is?
Senator David Senjum.
In the House of Representatives, our chief author is Representative Jamie Long. So between Representative Long and Senator Senjum, we want to find excellent policy language that moves this initiative forward boldly.
Awesome. Well, I know it is the first day of session and you both are pretty busy today, but I've got a few other questions to cover if we have the time. So Fresh Energy has a few new partnerships in the works, focused on a few new initiatives for us. And the initiatives highlight multiple benefits of clean energy and energy efficiency. So let's start with conservation solar. Through better project design and siting, solar can be a significant tool for driving landscape-scale benefits for clean water, wildlife habitat, and local farms. So what does this new policy do?
So Fresh Energy has helped to pass conservation solar policies in a number of states after we first passed flagship legislation in Minnesota a few years ago. Oddly enough, this is one topic where we're America's foremost expert on solar farms having habitat and bee and butterfly and pollinator habitat, flowering plants, deep-rooted prairie-style plantings underneath the solar farms and around them. We're going to take another baby step, not big, bold, dramatic steps, but another baby step, making that the norm, the routine norm among solar farm developers in Minnesota. This is a great policy because it brings together both political parties and brings together rural interests and agricultural interests and county and local government who have to permit solar farms. But we also bring out odd actors like the entomologist lobby and the beekeeper lobby. And we found everybody loves the idea that solar farms can protect not only the climate by generating carbon-free electricity, but they can protect the soil by building carbon content of the soil. They can reduce water quality problems. They can increase biodiversity of plants and animals and pollinators. And we even next week have this subject area very, very prominently featured at the National Conference of Pheasants Forever. And Conservation Allies who carry guns is a good ally to have. So we're building a broad public will among solar developers, conservationists, and farmers that this is the right way to develop a solar farm.
One of the things I found most exciting about this policy, and this isn't even really a conservation end use, but it's a multiple use. If you build your solar farm in exactly the same way that you normally would, but you just put it 6 feet off the ground instead of 1 or 2 feet off the ground, you can actually have livestock grazing under it and use it for and generate economic benefit for the landowner through multiple uses. And so we can have sheep solar farms, which I can't wait to go visit one. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
They say we're never gonna have goat solar farms because goats chew on wires, so we're not gonna have that.
Well, okay, well, let's move on to another partnership that we're excited about for this year, something new for us. Energy efficient nursing homes. Across our state, elder care facilities are facing unprecedented need with insufficient resources. In fact, in many rural communities, the local nursing home is one of the largest employers, and they're a really vital cog in the local economy. I know, I grew up in a really small town. So how can investing in energy efficiency help nursing homes all across the state reduce costs and create new jobs?
Well, one of the important things to understand and just remember about nursing homes is they tend to be larger, older buildings, which means that the bang for your buck when you make an investment and the efficiency is going to be bigger than just about anywhere else. And nursing homes serve every corner of the state. So when you make an investment in nursing homes broadly, you're serving every region. There's nursing homes in the metro, there's nursing homes in Northeast and Northwest Minnesota. And all of them have, some common challenges around operating costs, around the kind of quality of life and livability of the building, the physical building itself. that are all benefit when we use sort of best practices for energy efficiency. There's a real need for upfront capital cost resources to do those projects. A facility that might be run by a nonprofit or public entity that's operating on a shoestring budget just does not have access to the kinds of resources at scale to do big energy efficiency retrofits. Things like swapping out a boiler, updating to a modern HVAC system that might make a really big difference in the bottom line of the facility. You just aren't accessible to a building that's not barely getting by in terms of being able to stay open. And when we make those investments, we get the residual benefits of the jobs that are created doing the projects and the jobs that are protected when the facility is more economically viable over the long term.
Great. That's awesome. Well, I know you are working nonstop. Well, you have been leading up to session and now session's here. Is there anything that you want to talk about that I missed in all these prior questions, things you want to cover, or did I do a great job and hit every point?
Well, I do want to mention that, Fresh Energy is a policy advocacy organization with a really strong point of view and a clear focus. But a lot of public policy can happen in places outside of the state legislature, whether it's the Public Utilities Commission, in the governor's office, the Pollution Control Agency, or even in boardrooms of Great River Energy and Xcel Energy. They make decisions that affect the public interest too. So we want to pledge to you that we're looking at every possible opportunity and angle, whether it's at City Hall or whether it's in the Senate Bonding Committee. We're looking for every possible place to move public policy and public decisions. And, we got to make sure that the legislature doesn't infringe on the executive's authority to move public policy, and the legislature doesn't infringe on the Public Utilities Commission to make public decisions. So we'll be in every one of those rooms representing your point of view, advocating for a carbon-free, prosperous, equitable world. That's our pledge, and we really deeply appreciate how you've supported us and you pitched in shoulder to shoulder with Fresh Energy over these many years.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that's a wrap for our conversation. Thank you both for your insight. Session is only just getting started, and I'm sure we'll have updates over the coming weeks and months as you're available for listeners. Folks can stay tuned to our blog at fresh-energy.org for the latest updates, or follow our social media as well. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm sure we will be talking again as things really get rolling at the Capitol. Also, I think in the next week and a half or so, I'm going to be talking about advanced building performance standards with Ben Rabe and a guest, so I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, thanks to everyone for listening and subscribing to our brand new podcast. You can support Fresh Energy's work by making a donation today. Visit our website at fresh-energy.org and click donate in the upper right corner. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay fresh.